真的写就要兄弟运动，然后我帮你把这个桌面的上头全部先给你截个图，然后全部删掉，然后再把这个作为桌面放在这，然后你点不到。我切给你，我加了一个分数版，盖了。100岁，
Okay, we might be ready to get started. So, what the heck is going on here? This is not the new one.
Oh my god.
This is not the new stuff. I'll have to download it, but let's check Dropbox one more time. Project 3 help. Okay, this might be the real thing. Okay. I uploaded this to the college folder. It's just this machine is out of date. Surprise, surprise. Sure that this is up to date. I think maybe, let's run it. Let's build it.
没有，我只动了这个。
Okay, so this is all I'm gonna do. So, so here, you can navigate around, and it puts displays the right files in the right place, and will move up and down, and so you can navigate around directories. And I talked about writing code to do a pop-up window and looking at the code, and I decided not to do that. I gotta leave you something to do. Okay, so all the stuff to transfer files is there in COM, but I haven't done that here. It's easy to do. Okay, you need to, we'll look at what I'm doing, and then I'll make a couple of comments about what you need to do. But so I'm not going to do any more with this until after you've turned in project 3. And then I will add my own pop-up window, and I'll add a little bit of repository content, not a lot, but sort of helper for project 4 maybe. But so let's take a look at a couple of things before I go to. Well, let's just do this. Let me show you that. So here, as we click around, you'll see messages going to the, messages going that you can tell what the messages are. And I'm printing out both the incoming message to the server and the message of the server sending out. So it's kind of, you can really get a flavor for what's going on here. And when you click on this double dot, it just says move up to the parent. Okay. And, and there's some files in this guy. So if you pulled up pull up Windows Explorer and looked at, there's a storage directory in this project, and looked at, it's exactly, you'd see that exactly what I'm showing here is what's in those directories. Okay? So you can navigate around. So basically, this is an awful lot of browse. I think, I do think there's a couple of places this ought to go. One is to pop up. So here, when I double click on directories, I'm navigating around, okay? But, and I'm showing you up here where I'm navigating, but nothing happens if I click on a file. So, it needs a file list. That's what I call this list box, file list. Button click, mouse double click, file list, mouse double click, okay. And when you double click that mouse, what you would do is open a file. You'd send a message to the server saying, send me a file. And the COM system knows how to do that. I don't have any processing on either end to do that yet, okay? I've got processing on both ends to do all this stuff, okay? And we'll look at that quickly. And then you need to add things very similar to what I've already got there to send a file up and then pop it up in a window. And I'll show you how to add another window. I'm not going to add it for you. I'm not going to, but I'll show you how to add it. And then all you need to do, you can, .NET has a nice, you can, in its system.io, it's got a file class, and you can just read read text to end or something. I forgot what but so you're just reading it out as a text in one big gulp as a text file, and all you're doing is setting that text equal to the text of the window, You showed it, okay. Now you need a scroller, you know, you want a flow document, but you want a flow document scroller wrapped around it so you get scroll bars so you can scroll through the code, okay. And I'll show you where you can look to get some, you know, I don't know whether I want to show you or not, because it shows you exactly what to do. Well, mostly what to do. So maybe in class on Tuesday, would you send me an email and remind me on class on Tuesday, I will do a little demo of, not here, not tied into here, but I'll do a little demo of pulling up a file into a scrollable window. So, and I probably won't even post it. I'll just show you, okay? So, you know. But anyway. So let's take a look at what's going on here. Actually, let's do a couple of things first. So let's do this. Let's go, because one of the things you have to do is demonstrate you meet requirements. So let's suppose I did this. So let me go here to properties on the GUI, and I'm going to change this from Windows application to console application. I'm not going to do another thing, just that. Now let's see what happens. So up comes my window with all that functionality, but now, guess what? I got a console window anytime so what you're seeing here is the translator that this guy links to telling you what he's doing, okay? But you could put console statements anywhere in here, you know, in functions that do something, you could put a console statement. Okay? So to demonstrate you meet the requirements, what you can do is have a test function that has a bunch of lower level test functions, and each test function has the body of what's in a event handler. And so now that event handler, what I would do is I would copy that code out of the event handler, put it in this function, and then I would call, on the event handler, I would call that function. You could call the event handler. The problem is that you need things like the selected item, okay? You click on, you need the selected item. And it can be a little fussy to set that up, you know, in a test. It's easy in the, you know, but it can be a little fussy to set it up in the test. So, you know, but some model like that. And then you just call that sequence of operations, and, you know, you see the message flow going back and forth, you know, on the consoles. And by the way, if you want to, let's do this. Let's go in here to my WPF app, and let's right here, let's just say console.title equals, quote, project free help GUI console. Now when I run it, sure enough, project 3 help GUI console, it's telling you what it is. And we could go into the server, and we could say, let's go into the server. And in the server, in main, we could say set console title. It's set console title. Set console title A. Project free help server proto self, please, prototype console. The A says this is ASCII. So now in the Project Tree Help Server Prototype Console, Project Tree Help GUI Console, so it's really clear which is which. And you say, gee, I want to make this bigger, font size bigger and stuff. It turns out that's hard to do because it's you got to go into the Windows platform and change it because this window is being generated by Windows, and you got to dig down and it's very fussy about that. This is called the non-client area, and it's really fussy about the non-client area. It thinks you should never touch the non-client area, okay, other than use its function. So but not a big deal. I think it's fine just the way it is. So that'll help the TAs understand what's running where. Okay. Instead of command 32 exe, command 32 which is which, I don't know. Now you know. So, you can print out titles on the beginning anyway to whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. So, so the interesting thing is this console, it works just like it always did. Okay. Okay. Nothing has changed. Except that now we can see stuff going on in that, posting message. That's not very interesting. I would probably take out those or comment out those statements in the translator, but I would put some statements in the, console writes in the GUI, just, in the important parts. Don't ask me what the important parts are. That's up to you. Let's take a little bit of a look at some of the code just to help you get a little oriented toward what I'm doing and maybe answer a couple of your questions ahead of time. So, first of all, yes, you should put comment decorations. Prologue. Prologue, package operations, required files, maintenance history. And I've put a couple of comments about here. Translator has to be statically linked. I discovered that the loader had trouble. If my translator used the COM wrapper as a DLL, now there were two DLLs, the loader got confused. It would load the translator just fine, but then it couldn't find the DLL. No matter where you put it, it wasn't looking in any of the reasonable places, okay? It couldn't find that second DLL. There's a way to do that. There is an event handler for load failures, and in that event handler, you can tell it where to look, the specific directory where that's going to be. So that would work. Instead, I just built the COM wrapper as a static library, and I made the translator. So now there's only one DLL. That translator is statically linked to the COM wrapper library, and it does the COM library wrapper has those import-export statements. But if you build it as a static library, they do no harm. They're not being used because in the static library, it's all linked statically. So there's no import-export happening at load time. So, they're not being, but it doesn't matter. No harm done to have them there. So, I probably will add the event handler so that you could build and I'll demo it on Tuesday. I'll add the handler just so you've seen it once, you know how to work it, because it's not uncommon when you're building stuff that you have a DLL that depends on another DLL that depends on another DLL. And you need that because the loader doesn't search in the right places. It's got Microsoft specific places it looks at, but you know, it's ignoring you. So, okay, and now, you know, I've made some comments here. Process incoming messages on child thread. Function dispatched by child thread to the main thread. So I have a bunch of these functions: clear DIRs, add dir, insert parent. So when I'm clicking on the click, you know, this. I always, when I'm refreshing the directory display, I always insert dot dot. When in add parent, I always insert dot dot at the very beginning. And now when I click on it, I recognize that that's, you know, I've clicked on that go up, and so I do what's necessary to go up rather than expecting to go down. And so there's a bunch of these functions that the main thread has to run because you know, they're manipulating the window. The child thread is not allowed to run these functions, and so all of these are going to get dispatched by the WPF dispatcher. So you know, wrapped in a delegate, and now you know, so these are functions. All those above there are functions that the you know, various handlers are going to use to dispatch to the, you know, when they come back handling this response message, it's got some information to write into the display, and so it's got to use one of these functions to get the main thread to do that. And you'll probably have to add some more functions, you know, when you add more stuff. So now I have this dispatcher, which is a, you know, dictionary, just like our equivalent in the C++ world to unordered map. And so we're just adding these client processing based on the key. So you want to add some new functionality. You create a message that has a new key. Command equals whatever the key, some unique key to trigger that operation, and you write a lambda to carry out whatever action on that message needs to be done, and then you add it to the dispatcher. And now in comes the message. The process messages grabs that identifier, puts it into the you know, dispatcher, and then you know, and then away it goes. Now, for each of the actions that a message is going to trigger, I have a dispatcher load get dirs, for example. So one of my messages is going to ask for get dirs, and so now it's coming back with that dir list, and I gotta parse the message, grab the dirs, and coerce the main thread to display them in the list box. Okay. So action, see message, okay, get dir. So action is a delegate. Again, for you guys that didn't take SMA, think of a standard function whose return value is void. Action never returns, action delegate never returns anything. It's always void. And you can have any number of arguments here. None, meaning it takes nothing, returns nothing. One, it accepts that type and returns nothing. Two, it accepts arguments of both those types and returns nothing. So, so this is an action that accepts a message, and I've named it get dirs, and so I have first thing I need to do is clear the directory list. So I create an action. Now notice there's no argument here because I'm going to call a function that takes no arguments. Clear dirs is just a function up here. It's one of those guys up here. okay, that the main thread is going to run just to clear that directory list. Okay, it's right here. Here's clear ders. Takes no arguments. All it does is say dir list items not clear. Okay. So now I've got to get the main thread to clear the directory. So sure enough, I pack it up in an action and I dispatch it. Okay. And even though it has no arguments, so the way these what the dispatcher expects is a lambda or a callable object to run and a list of its arguments. And that's always done as an array of objects because the framework has no idea what types you're going to pass it, so it just takes an object type, okay, and that works fine. But if there's no arguments, you still have to provide this. It doesn't work just to leave it off. You still got to provide it with nothing in the braces. Okay. And then so that clears the directory. Now I'm going to go and pull the directory names out of my message. So var enum receive message.attributes.getEnumerator and enumerator.move next string key equal enumer.current key. If key contains dir, remember I'm getting back to the message dir1, dir2, dir3. Key is dir1, name of dir1, dir2, name of dir2, dir3, name of dir3. So I'm just pulling out those names. So now, and I'm going to do it one by one. Action of string. So now this is an action that's going to accept the string, do dir, and there's a function up here, do dir. Okay, and what that does is that adds that dir name to the dir list items, you know. So and so add dir of dir, and I dispatch it. Piece of cake. So now the only other thing I got to do is I got to remember what I did here. Hang on a minute. Oh, all I'm doing here, insert up. All I'm doing here is making sure that the dot. So these are going to put the dir names in the dir list, and now I insert at location 0 dot. Just my up. Okay, that's all. And now the last thing I do is add client proc get dirs to get dirs. So what this is doing is this is adding to the my message dispatcher this key and this value. The key is get dirs, and the value is this action that executes the processing needed for that message. Okay. Seeing some blank looks. That makes sense? Pay, does that make sense? I figured it would make sense to you guys. Better. Cool. Oil? UL. I knew I didn't have it right this morning. UL. Make sense?
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock, these handsome fellows and Amar will be here in this room, and probably, you know, getting little groups around each one of them and you know, answering questions about the code. You ought to look at this code before you know, don't just come in without looking at the code. That's a waste of your time and their time. And they will look at the code before they come. Right, guys? I just put it up this morning, so, you know, if you looked at what was there before, it's changed a little bit. Not a lot, but enough to navigate around. So, you know, so now I have a bunch of delegates, a bunch of client procs, and I can write it in all one function. And guess what? That function is going to be about 300 lines. Let's see, that's minus 15 points or something. Okay. Not minus 15, it'd be minus, what do we do? Minus 5, I think? I forgot. But you can't lose more than 5 points for oversized functions. So. But anyway, so I broke it up into one function for each proc, and installed that proc in the dispatcher, and then another function that does the same thing for the next one. So now you can just come and you can write a very similar function. So when you need to add some functionality, you could take one of these, copy it, and then modify it, rename it to be your, and just, that's what I do. It works. Save you some time. And now, the other thing you got to remember to do is, now you got to call each of those functions, okay? To load. So if you create a new one, you gotta call that new function, which at its end will add itself into the dispatcher. Then the window's loaded. So this is the event that once the parse tree has been built, this event handler will be called. And so what am I doing? I'm starting COM using the translator. So here, the translator is a DLL that I've loaded, and I didn't write any specific code to load it. I just made a dependency on the DLL, and the runtime loaded it. So, I created an endpoint, localhost 8082, that's what I'm listening to. These are hardwired. You might choose to pass this on the command line. And you say, but this is a GUI, it doesn't have a command line. Wrong, it does have a command line, and you can get at it. Okay? There is a function to get at the command line for the GUI. Okay, so you could add the machine address on the command line. It'd be a nice thing to do, but it's up to you.
You have a connection. You have to provide a connection.
Yeah, but see, I'm creating a connection right here. I'm creating my instance of COM with a listener right here, and I'm using these. Okay, so if you don't want to hardwire these, you got to pass them into the command line. Now this guy will just, you could have on the command line, set up to store those things, in some. But anyway. And then process messages calls that function we look really quickly at that starts a thread and just, it just gets a message. And did we look at that this morning? I'm sure I looked at it with you sometime. Let's just take a quick process message is, so, all we're doing is defining a. So this is a delegate, thread start delegate. A lot of what you've seen me define an action or an action of some argument. This thread start delegate is a delegate that's designed to be accepted by a thread. And so, what do we do? While true, I'm sitting here forever. Get message from the translator, get its value and make that the message ID. And then call dispatcher. If dispatcher contains key that message ID, then you get the dispatcher to invoke that processing. That's all we're doing. And then we create a new thread. Is background true? Thread start. You guys aren't going to have anything to do this afternoon. Load dispatcher just loaded those, those two functions, those two right now, just those two client procs, but you'll have more. And then, so what do we do then? Then here, I'm defining a message, the first message that I want to send to the server. So I'm going to send two. I'm going to send them a server that says, give me your DIRs, and I'm going to use the top level storage path. So I have a directory called storage. So I give it the top level storage. You know, this is what I give it. And 2 is server endpoint, okay? And from is my endpoint, okay? And then I add the command get dirs, add the path. Now, I am using a path stack. When I click and go down, you know, I'm pushing the old path onto the stack. Okay, so the top of the path stack is always my current path. And when I go up, what do? I just pop the stack. Piece of cake. Simple. Any other way to do it is complicated as the devil. Okay. Saving it and trying to figure out what it is and parsing the strings and what a mess. So I just, you know, wherever, I just push it. And we'll see in a minute. So, well, in fact, right here, you see me, path stack.push, I'm pushing, this is my current path. I'm at the top level. And this is not my path here, it's the path on the server that I want to query. So that path stack is keeping track of the path to the server, the place in storage on the server that I want to access. I don't have to know his directory structure. All I got to know is that it starts with server or with storage. That's all I need to know. It starts with storage, and then I'll get to all the other stuff by exploring with it, by clicking on, seeing the directories and clicking into them and stuff like that. So I send a message to get dirs, and I send a message to get files, and I'm done. And here is where I would probably put little test functions, a little demo. So you can see it's the equivalent of, sending. I would build messages in here and send them, and just to demo it. So instead of responding to clicks, this is just sending the message, and now this guy will respond to those messages and do whatever is appropriate. Okay. You'd have to be careful. For example, what you want to do is demonstrate moving into, there's a directory called test1. So if you want to move into test1, inside this function, you better make the stack push, that, so you take the top of the stack and you append test1 to it to get the full path, push that on the stack, and then trigger the message. If you don't do that, then, this expects you to be, on that path stack, it expects you to have the correct stack, correct path. So, and here, this is just for display in the top. I didn't want to display the / storage because the / is for the server. Okay, just saying server, move up one level and then down into the storage directory. So, but I don't want to show that on my display, so I just removed that first one. Here's dir list mouse double click. So I build path for the selected directory. So here, the selected directory, I just get, this is a list box dot selected item. The name, it's a string, whose name is. If selected dir equals .. if path stack count is greater than 1, pop it. Why did I say this greater than 1? Because the first item is storage, and if I go beyond it, I have nothing, okay? And so you'll have some nice exceptions going and stuff. This just stops when you get to the top, to the top path. So that just pops the stack. That's all it does, then returns. Else, so it's not ... then I peek at the top of the stack. That's my current path, and I say / selected dir, and then I push that onto the stack. Piece of cake. Really simple. And now I'm going to display the path of the dir. So here I'm using that remove first dir path stack dot peek. and then build message to get DIRs and post it. Okay, so this is the mouse double click. So what should happen with the mouse double click? In the directory list, I should get a file, generate a message to get the directories and get a message and send a message to get the files. And that processing had darn well better do whatever bookkeeping, clearing, and all that sort of stuff, which is what we saw. So now, build message to get DIRs and post it. So new CS endpoint, server endpoint, machine address, localhost 8080. This is the server. And again, this is hardwired, and it will be better to have to find it somewhere, could be from a command line or wherever. And now create a new message. So endpoint to string server endpoint where I want it to go. And from my endpoint, where it's coming from, the command is get DIRs. Path, I gotta have a path. Path is path stack.peak, my current path, okay? So, and then translate it out post message. And now I build a message to get files. And it already has a command, so I have to remove it. Otherwise, the dictionary gets very unhappy with me because it's not allowed to take. Now, it would, it would be nice to have a method so that I didn't have to remove it and then add it, so I could just edit it. Okay, build a method called edit that calls remove and then add or something. Okay, yeah, a piece of cake. But anyway, now get files, translate post message. Okay. So for the files list, when you double click on that, you'll need something just like this. But what it's going to do is tell the server, send me the file, and then you're going to pop up a window. So how do you do that? You go to GUI and you say add new item. Guess what? WPF. Guess what? I can add a window. I'm not adding a new project. I could, but that's clumsy, I can just add this new, and this will have both the XAML and the code behind. And now it's in this project, so when I want to pop it up, I just say new window. It'll be, by default, it'll be named window 1 instead of main window. And I'll just say new window 1, show. There it is, okay. I'll say window 1, and I'll say, I'll load the text into that window 1. And then I'll say show. Okay. There it is, pop up. Okay. So, and that's it. It's the whole thing. Is it trivial? No, it's not trivial. But is it overwhelmingly difficult? No, it's not overwhelmingly difficult. Okay. Yeah, there's things you gotta do. Okay, you gotta work out a little bit. But hey, that's what they pay us all this money for, right? They pay me money for it. You pay money for it. But when you get out of here, they'll pay you well. You'll be rich. I'll be a rich software developer. Relatively speaking, not rich relative to Bill Gates, but rich, certainly rich relative to you right now. Right, Mikhail? Right, pressure? Yeah. Okay. So, I don't think I need to say much of anything more. We already looked at the server proc and we see, so, there's this duality. I didn't bring my pens. Maybe with luck, one of these will work. Not very well. Bear with me. Let me go get some pens out of my office. Right back. Okay, so let's talk about duality. I'm glad I got the pens. You can't see that more than 3 feet away from the board. So, that's not much better, is it? So in each of these, so if this is the GUI client GUI, and this is the server, and there's COM here, which I'll represent very abstractly. We have a dispatcher that accepts a message key, let's call it message ID, and invokes a server proc. And here we have a dispatcher that takes we have a dispatcher takes a message ID and invokes it. And so all we're really doing when we add new functionality is add a new proc with a key on the server side, a new proc with a key on the client side. You want to add new functionality, you do those two things, and you are done, baby. Okay. Yes. Okay. So shall we talk about requirements a little bit? Is that the next thing to do? Anything else that you need before we talk about requirements a little bit? Okay. So let's pull up some requirements. Wait, please. Okay, project 3. So shall provide an asynchronous message passing communication channel used for all communication between clients and the remote server, and that's already all done in the demo. The channel will use HTTP style messages, that's already done in the channel. For sending, receiving requests, receiving replies, and transferring files between clients, that's why I stopped and didn't do the pop-up. You got something to do? I don't want to do all the requirements for you. Shall provide a client graphical user interface that supports these tabs. Now, I don't have any tabs in my demo, but Amar in his demo, so there's 2 on the, the, go to another window, and just pull up. You will see directories, 687, code, project 3, help spring 18. So sure enough, there's a demo by MR, and he has a tab control, and most of the tabs you'll need. And but what he does is he links to a dummy channel. He doesn't have a real channel, so he didn't have to deal with making this independency, making the client independent from everything the services that it needs, because there was nothing there that flummoxed the client. There was no kernel object like a mutex or a condition variable or any of those other stuff. Okay, so it was fairly simple. So good from a GUI point of view, at least for the tabbing. But didn't give you much help as far as hooking things up. And so the reason I did this demo was to show you really clearly what you got to do to hook things up. What do you do in order to get this GUI, managed GUI, C# GUI, talk to C++ code? And we did it through the translator, C++ CLI translator, and we needed to have an interface and an object factory using dependency inversion principle to give a strong separation between the implementation that the translator sees from what is actually an interface and a factory on both parts, between the translator and the native code, and between the GUI and the translator. Okay, so I think that you should plan to do something like the following. I think for requirement 2, you should pop up a window, click on one of those files, and pop up a window showing its code. There's other thing, you could perfectly well have a tab view on that, where one tab is just the browsing tab, and the other tab sets the relationships. That could that second tab could wait for project 4, but you don't really have a whole lot to do other than learning stuff. Understanding how things work. You don't have a whole lot to do for project 3. So I think that might be a good thing to do for project 3, is to try to push into setting those relationships. Neither Amar nor I have the NoSQL database in our demos. And I'm not going to put it there, and I don't want him to put it there. Okay, that's up to you. But I will do a help for project 4, and it probably won't be a whole lot more than me adding the NoSQL database and interacting with it. Just maybe selecting, maybe doing the pop-up window and doing the relationship, just to show you. After. Long after your project 3 is due. Okay, I don't know, but I'll do something. I'll probably put the NoSQL data, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna version. I'm not gonna check in. I'm not gonna check out. All that's up to you. So I think it would make sense for you to for each of these tabs, do a little communication with a server. Maybe you're not going to do anything functional other than have a little echoing type message going back, so that the server will say, I'm responding to a checking command, and comes back, and the client, on its console window, if you do it that way, says, I've received a checking command. I've received a reply from the server about my checking. So for each of those tabs, do a little message like that. And so what that'll force you to do is to have really simple server proc, client proc for each of the tabs. And now when you get to project 4, you just start filling in the details. Okay, so the structure is all there, all ready to go. And now in project 4, you just have to add some details. I use that just, understanding that it doesn't mean it's simple, but it won't be overwhelming. Notice by now, you know, a lot of you are saying C#. I don't know C#. Well, that's terrible. But you've looked at this code, and I can make sense out of this. I think I can understand him. Right? And you've got a lot of friends in the class who've taken SMA, you know, and then you've got TAs who've taken SMA and, you know, done real well in it. So, you know, if you have problems, the thing to do is not to go to them and say, I don't know C#, help me, help me, help me. You'll get zero help if you do that. But if you start writing some C# and you say, you know, I got some stuff beginning and it was okay, but now I'm trying to do this and it won't compile. What's wrong? You have something tangible, you can take it to them, and in 2 minutes they can say, oh, here's the problem. You got 2. Right, Ritesh? You've got Java background, but no C# background, is that correct? All righty. So I think we would be very happy with your project 3 if we saw you popping up a code window by double-clicking on it. We'd be even happier if you did a little bit of selection, but you know, we'd be happy to see you having a simple proc, just showing message flow back and forth for each of the tabs. You do need to demonstrate you meet requirements. I've shown you how to open a console with a GUI, and you just write console.write, you know, and it'll write to that. It'll write to that. And so what you want is in your, what I would do is I would make a function called test or something, demo or something, and I would call that function from my probably from my Windows load. I think I wrote that in the constructor, but I think I would put it in Windows load because you might do something that required the window to be already loaded, and almost certainly would be. So, you know, and then just programmatically call. And your goal would be not to duplicate all the code you have in the message handler, but to write a function that'll work both for the test and the message handler. You take a lot of that code out of the message handler and put it in a function that the message handler can call. Mainly what the message handler will do is be giving you things like selected item and all that sort of stuff that you know, your test function won't have, and so you'll just pick. Do that. So this automated unit test, I would just run, you know, from my window loaded function, I would have a single call called test or demo or something, okay? And that would only run once. And it just steps through and does a lot of the things your message handler does. It's as if a virtual TA was clicking on the buttons. Right? Virtual TA, they're not going to do it. You know, don't expect them to click the buttons. No, it's not appropriate for you to pop up a message that says, in order to run tests, click these buttons. Because, you know, that quickly devolves down into, TA, you designed my test for me. That's not what we want. We really need to design the test. Now, they've got a huge amount of grading, and the department is very ungenerous with, you know, hours for them to get it done, paying them for hours to get it done. So we really need you to demonstrate it so they can look at it quickly and grade each project. I think I'm about done. Are there questions? Questions for me? Yes.
Do we need to automate?
Every test, it doesn't mean that you have to automate everything that your GUI can do. What you need to do is automate what you're trying to show here. So you're automating the selection of a directory and coming back, maybe. You're automating the selection of a file and popping up the code window. And you're automating the effect of each tab by sending these dummy messages back and forth. And you know, you can programmatically open the tabs as a way to do it, but I don't know that you really have to do that. You know, get into that. Probably for my, you know, what I will do in my project 3, you know, after you've submitted your project 3s, 2 weeks later, I'll post basically this demo with some automation for testing and a pop-up code window. You know, and it will have the NoSQL database, and I'll interact with it just a little tiny bit. I won't do check-ins and check-outs. Right? Are we done? Yes. The model for the Connect to Server tab was to set set your listening port and set their listening port. You know, those things that I hardwired here. Okay. So by the time you have that tab, now it's easy. You no longer need it. You know, you just have a number of variables in your class, in your GUI class, in the window class, and you're from that window you're setting them. Then you make the connection. That's when you call translator .connect or .listen. Not necessarily. You know, if you have that window and you enter stuff, a single button, you have a button that says connect. Do that. I'm not, you know, this is, you don't have to do, you know, idea of the connect window is just to allow you to say, here's the server that I want, you know, and you're not really setting the port for the server. You're saying, I want to send my messages to this place, and I expect a server to be listening at that place.
Worry about okay. What's savings? Version.
So Tharut asked an interesting question. So when I'm clicking around in this, the server is he's using get dir and get files, and I think those work very happily whether the file is open or not, because I think it's just looking at the directory entries, not really trying to open a file. Now, when you double click on a file, I think what you should do is, what I would do is I would have a little retry wrapper, and if it failed, I would send back a fail message, can't connect right now. Please try later. But it would be okay if you just tested for open, didn't retry, just tested for open, and then if it was open, you couldn't connect to it, you sent back a can't open. But the reason I put that retry on the midterm exam was to show you do this. No obligation to it.
How about version? You don't have to care about it.
Not in Project 3, you don't have to worry about versions. Project 4, you definitely do. But understand that when you're browsing around, you'll see all the files in the directory. You see all the versions.
How about the status, like open or close status?
In Project 4, you'll have to worry about that, but you don't really have to worry about it in Project 4. You know, the more you get done of those sorts of things, the less you have to do for Project 4. And we are now, understand, this is March 30th, and the class ends on April.
May 1st.
May, yeah, that's right, it's May. That's right, you got more time. You got loads of time. No. But you got more time than I was thinking. Thank you, Priya.
Vishnu Priya.
Priya, yeah. Vishnu Priya, thank you. I was trying to steal a month from you. Gee, we could bask in the sunshine for 30 seconds. Any other questions?
Is project 4 dependent on project?
I beg your pardon?
Is project 4 dependent on project 2?
Does Project 4 depend on Project 2? Yes.
Oh. I think they're quite different from what we implement. I think project.
I think
project,
you could use the NoSQL database. Yeah, NoSQL database we implemented in Project 1. Project 2, so Project 2 was designed to have you implement the versioning, you know, all that kind of stuff, and check in and check out processes. And so Project 4, the idea of Project 4 is you're just going to use them, what you implement. Now, if you didn't implement them correctly, then you're going to have to implement them now. And I'm not going to implement them for you. You were hoping that I would do my Project 2, and I'm not going to do that. Yes?
Is for the demonstration testing of Project 3, do we need to include the NoSQL DB, or that's just an option on us? How we want to deploy?
You don't need to test the NoSQL DB. You don't need to do that. There's no requirement for that in Project 3, so you just have to demonstrate you meet the requirements. You don't have to demonstrate this getting ready for Project 4 stuff.
Professor, for the check-in and the checkout tabs, like, do we have to in this project, like for if we have implemented?
You don't actually, so in Project 3, you don't actually have to do check-in, check-out, and all that sort of stuff. What you have to do, I think you should have those tabs, and you can just send dummy messages back and forth saying this is a check-in request, and the server sends back a reply that says, you know.
So for the browse, should we browse where the file where we check in it, or just browse the repository whole storage?
I just browsed.
Okay.
No, this really is a significant part of the browse functionality. So, hey, that requirement is almost all done.
In the Project 4, if I want to check in file and its dependencies, so I think I should browse where it is.
So yeah, so I've talked about this a little bit, and let me go back to that again. So my mental model is I would have a so now you know you don't have just so this really is a tab. This is the browse tab on your GUI, okay? And you'll have a browse tab called check-in. In the browse tab and check-in, I would have places to supply all the information except, I wouldn't supply the relationships. Now, Harika strongly disagrees with me. She thinks that's really a bad idea. But what I would do is, I would just supply all the metadata except for the relationships. And then to get the relationships, I would pull up this, okay? And, you could, if you wanted to, you could make this a tab display and have a browse, which is exactly this, and then have another tab which did the same sort of thing, but added the functionality to identify the parent and then click around and identify the children. So, and one way to do that is to add here, instead of this list box right now this is just a text block. Each one of these items is just a text block, but that's fairly easy to change that into a grid that has a checkbox and a text box. And now, to say this is a child, you just click. Okay? And that'll add that metadata. If you've identified the parent, now that adds the metadata into, So in this relationship display, maybe you'll have a text box up here that says parent, and the first double click, all it does is put this guy in the parent. And then you go by and check, 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 and that's adding relationships to that parent. And then if you'll browse around to a different directory and check, 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 and that'll add keep adding into the same parent. Okay, something like that. That's my mental model of how you might do it. Not the only way to do it. Eureka has her own thing. She's already done it, I think. So that's why she's resisting, because she's already done it, and that's fine. I like to see you design things your way, not my way. No, that's good. It says there's a living, breathing, thinking developer, there, who's not just doing what the prof said, but doing some cool stuff. I can always count on Eureka to do some cool stuff.
We don't have any storage. We are just taking the files and storing in a particular storage repository.
I certainly would have directories in my repository. I absolutely would. Why? Because I have 10,000 items in my repository. And do I want to see here 10,000 items on a scrollable list? I don't want to do that. For our scale, for this, think of this, I think of this as a prototype repository. You could get away with it, but that's a significant design issue that you haven't resolved. Here, because we've already got the mechanics to look in directories, now that problem is solved. How you're going to allocate them across directories, that's an interesting question, and not one that you need to resolve. And this, you can just pick some, you can do it based on the first property or something like that, but it doesn't really matter. But, once you've decided, so this summer I will probably build a repository because I need it badly, because I do a really bad job of version control, okay, as you all know. So, I'll do something specifically designed to handle that. Exactly what, I don't know yet, that'll come this summer sometime. And by the way, I'll be doing a summer projects meeting. I do that every summer. I spend about 3 weeks with my family. I don't touch foot on Syracuse. I don't look at my Syracuse email. I don't do anything other than spend time with my family. But then the rest of the time, I come in about once a week. And when I come in, I say, hey, I'm coming in on Friday. We'll have a project meeting for anybody that wants to attend. So what I'll do is before April slips by, I'll have a summer projects meeting. 40 people will show up, and I'll have a Piazza, summer projects Piazza thing, and anybody that wants to can sign up, and I won't sign you up, you sign up for it, So it's no problem for them to sign up for themselves to Piazza, right?
Yeah, they can do that.
So, I never have any problem because I'm the instructor, so I have the instructor's privileges. I don't know what students can do and can't do, but, so just sign up for, to get notification. And what happens is when I come in, you'll know I'm in, and I'll tell you, today I'm gonna talk about blah, 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 blah. I talk about stuff I'm working on, and then give you the opportunity to talk about stuff you're working on. And the nice thing about that is if you do, you get a design review. We'll sit, and the other people that attend, and we'll do a design review, and that's a really good thing. That's the way it works in industry. And you say, but gee, I don't want to stand up there and get criticized. It isn't, people aren't hammering at you. They're talking about your code. You say, did you think about, this could be a problem. Have you thought about that? And it's just a nice conversation. In industry, somebody's recording all that, and you got to do something about it. You have to make a response. Either I disagree, I think it ought to be just this way, or you're right, I'll fix that. But for us, it's just about friendly, very friendly, just a conversation about it's just a nice chance to. So if your model is in the summer project, I'm going to take one of my class projects and I'm going to polish the heck out of it so that when I go into a job interview, I got this really nice thing to talk about. I think that's a good thing to do. You guys are not graduating this semester, are you? Not graduating?
No.
Okay, good. Now, you may be, if you're not here, that's okay. If you want, you can still, sign up for Piazza just to see the conversation, see what people, and, if you're off somewhere doing a summer internship and you're working on a project and you got some questions, you can send them, and I'll either answer or I'll say that's too complicated to answer all over Piazza, next time, when you come back. So. Any other questions about project work? Yes.
GUI and server prototype will be two different processes. GUI and server backend will be two different processes. Or you are running two processes from the same ID.
So what's happening is, I think what you're asking is how do I start them both?
Yeah.
So I do it this way. So you can go to the solution, you right-click on it, and you say set startup projects, and that gives you this window, and normally it'll come up with some other thing selected. You'll click this, and you just say which ones you want to start. And so I'm starting the GUI, and I'm starting the server prototype. Okay, that's how they both start up. Okay. Easy. Any other questions? Got time for the second wave anyway, so let's call it a day. And on Tuesday, we're going to talk about WPF. And you were going to send me an email, were you? What were you going to ask me in the email? Oh, put a scroll view. Add something else. I want to show the data template that lets you put a checkbox on. So add that to your email. And that code is on, the code that I was just running is on the Project 3 Health Spring PT. Why don't you guys go at it? Yeah, and if there is, let me know. Fantastic. Good. What you want? Not the salary, but what you're expecting from them. I'm looking for a good opportunity. So, they're looking for what kind of something like I've got some experience with it being stacked. I don't know. No, don't butter them up. Don't, say, here's why I'm asking. I mean, it's okay to say, I want to find out the industry in this country. And, my goal is to be a country for you, but I have these are my goals. I would be more specific about that. I would very good. Because that's what they're after, right?
No, they use PHP.
Well, don't denigrate that. I'm not a big fan of PHP. But,
Let's give it a shot.
you can say I'll be happy with your technology stack. But I want to. So what are they using besides PHP? They're using Angular?
They use a lot of technology, but that's the one about that.
Okay, well, I would pick 2 or 3 of the ones I mentioned, say I'd be really interested in getting some more experience with this and this. And they may say, well, we can put you on a project that'll give you the experience here, but not there. That's okay. Great.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Mark.
I came the early one. This is wrong.
Oh, that's fine.
Hey, come here.
No, it's fine.
Do you want me?
No, that's fine.
I think I put them all in.
So you marked it on the front there. Here's what I would like you to do. You put whatever grade you think is appropriate, but write really clearly. This is very similar to. Okay, but just say, just say that really clearly. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You say that really clearly. And if I think you're being too severe, don't worry about it. I'll say, I agree with the mark, but, blah, 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 something. But say so. Make it really clear. I would do supply a grade, and then we can talk about it a little bit after. I'm going to go warm up my coffee, and then I'll be right back, and we'll start.
Take your time.
Next page. You know what?
इधर हेल्प सेशन नहीं आ रहा है नहीं ऐसे कर कोड समझ लिया तो ऐसे ऐसे
लगा जो मैं अरे हो गया
अच्छा पानी देते हैं
Okay, let's start talking about prototype. So I've done part of what I said I was going to do. So where you'll find it is in the usual place, 687 code. Where code went to. Code. Project 3. Project 3, Health Spring 18. So it's right here in this incomplete demo is now old. Just don't let me delete it. I'll have to delete it when I get to my office. But the new one is here, Project 3 Help, Spring 18. Okay? So this guy is, why don't, I can delete this one. So let me pull up. Flood server certificate is out of date. So
Any
87
I
code. Project 3. Well, it's not here. So I guess it was just cached in my, so good. So what we're looking at is this Project 3 Help WPF. Okay. That's what I have up here. And let me just run it for you. So I did a couple of things this morning with the class. So what's going on here? I did something funny that confused. Let me just do what I did this morning. Turn it into a console application. It's oh, oh, got it open. Close window. Close window. Able to copy. So let's start projects. Multiple projects. What the heck is going on? Come on, give me my GUI. I did something this. I shouldn't change the code while I'm talking to the class. What did I do? What did I do? Why am I not? Let me do this. Do this. you please show me the GUI? What did I do? I may have to download this again, but let me see if I can figure out what it is. I did it that. Let this start up just for a moment. Now let's set our projects. So I've got GUI start and I've got server prototype start. Finally. So I don't know what it was I did, but anyway, so what I did was I made this so now we can navigate around, okay, and come back up, back up, come back up. What I didn't do, I said I might do a little code pop-up, and I decided not to do that because if I did that, then I would have done all the requirements for item 2. So I decided not to do it. I'll talk a little bit about how to do it, but I'm not going to do it. So what I did with the class this morning was, first thing was, you know, if you look, notice that as I am navigating around, if I go down to test 1, I'm showing you the message that the server received. So it received, I clicked down into test 1, it received the message to go into test 1 of storage and get files, okay? And so this is the get files command. So up above here, I sent them a message to get the DIRs on this path, software test 1, and what it sent back to me was the list of the directories, and there was only one. dir 1 is test 1.1. Okay, it's telling me that's what I got. And then I sent it a message to get files in storage test 1, and it sent back these 2 files, message.cpp and message.h, and they're displayed. Okay? So we'll talk a little bit about how that happens. Now, I also, what I did was, let me repeat that now. I'll see if I can get this to unhappy with me. So if you go to the GUI, go to the properties, I can set this to be a console application, and it should run just like it does now. So now notice I have a Project 3 Help Server Prototype console, and I have this other console, and let's give it a title. So let's go into this guy, and let's give him, when I constructor, let's just say console title equals project 3 GUI console. I'll explain in a minute why I'm doing that. So here's the, you know, this guy still works like he always did. But now, and a server console, but now I see project 3 help console, and this is actually the translator. I got console output statements, but you could put console statement, you could do a console.write in the GUI, and you'd see them here. Wouldn't affect anything, all it's doing is write, and if I just in the properties went back and changed it back to a Windows application, still works just fine. Okay. And my guess is that the framework is smart enough that if I don't have a console enabled, that it won't be doing any of those console writes, or just, you know, those methods are compiled away, I would expect. You know, did they? I don't know for sure. But anyway, so why would you do that? Well, now we can start to do a demonstration. I'll come back to that point. Don't let me forget. You bring me back to that point about the demonstration, okay? So let's take a little bit of a look at the code and see what's going on here. So first of all, you'll notice that I put comments, and you should. So for any package you submit, you have a prologue, that's what this guy is. You have a description of the package operations, the files that is required. Now, you know, there's a whole bunch of files that are required in that the translator requires, but all this guy needs is translator.dll. Okay. Now, I originally built the Windows library as a DLL and the translator as a DLL. And the translator loads the DLL. And if I ran the translator with it, as an exe, it would load that DLL just fine. When I built this as a DLL and loaded him into from the GUI, ran the GUI wouldn't run because the loader could find this DLL, but it couldn't find the DLL that this guy loads. Even though when I build him as an exe, he can find it, the loader can find it just fine. Apparently what happens is it'll load the first one, and then anything after, any dependencies on that DLL, it goes off and looks in some other strange place. And there is a way to manage that. There is a binding. If you get an error in loading, you can tell the loader where to go look with an event handler. And I haven't put that in this code. I probably will do that and show you on Tuesday if I remember. Would you send me an email that I was thinking about doing that? I did it last year in SMA, and you know I know it works correctly. So right now I am building this as the translator is built as a DLL, but the window library is built as a static library that the translator loads. So the translator uses a static library for everything it needs, and then but it builds as a DLL, and the GUI has to have a DLL for it. It can't take a static library from the translator because that would couple all of that implementation stuff that it can't deal with. It can't be a static library. It has to be loaded as a DLL with that interface. It's not that the code, you know, it's the compilation process can't deal with that detail. So anyway, you know, I've got a couple of comments somewhere. Translator has to be statically linked with a COM live wrapper. Loader can't find the translator DLL. And I'll show you how to do that, and then I'll add to the comments here, unless you use this. But anyway, so let's look at this GUI a little bit. So here's the main window, and I just put this console title, Project 3 Help, you know. So, so now we can begin to think about demos, but for the moment, I have a path stack. So when I am doing this, I'm keeping track of the paths where I currently am. So right now I'm in storage test 1. This is not my path on the GUI. This is the path in the server where I'm getting this information from. And that's what's being put on that path stack. Okay? So it starts out, actually the server needs /storage. And so what I see on my, what I put in my stack path is /storage. But now when I go into test 1, it's /storage / test 1 on the stack. And if I go into test 1, it'll be, the top of the stack will be this, okay? And now if I want to pop up, if I want to go up, I just click on this parent directory. And what happens is that just pops the stack, okay, to get me to the right, okay? Easy way. You know, you could do a current path and try to parse out, well, I moved up, so I got to remove this from the path. You could do that and go nuts. But if you just use a stack, whatever you got, push it on the stack, and you know, when you go up, you pop it. When you want to go down, you push it. You just take the top of the stack and you add / whatever the selected directory is. You know, you'll see me do that. And I push it on the stack. Piece of cake. So this is really the browse. I just met the browse requirement for you. Okay, so let's see how all that transpires here. So we got the stack path, and you know, I have a reference to the translator and endpoints and receive threads, and now I have a dictionary. So there's a duality here. I have the server and a client, and on the server, when it gets a message, it calls the dispatcher with that message ID, and it processes the message. And on the other side, when I get a reply coming back, I have a dispatcher over here, and I take that message ID, and that invokes a, so here, what's being invoked is a server proc, whatever's necessary to handle that message. And over here, I invoke a server proc designed to handle this message. And so for each different message type, I have a client proc and a server proc. So your job in figuring out when you add functionality is you add a message. Actually, you add a CS message and a native message, okay? And you add a client proc and a server proc, and you load them into the dispatcher, and you're done. You don't have to go snip, carve out code, you know, squeeze this in here and go crazy and get everything wrong and mess up the old stuff. You just get a client proc, get a server proc, you're done. Now that new functionality is available to you. So let's see how you actually do that. Again, all of this code, just like I've written it, you know, I changed the property to console, and I added the console titles for the server in here. You know, that isn't in that code on the, because I did that this morning for the class, just to show them that you could. But everything else is the same. So I have a function called process messages that what it does is, while true, get a message from the translator, okay, CS message, grab its ID that I always put in the command app, okay. So I grab the message ID, and the dispatcher, if the dispatcher contains that key, then dispatcher message ID invoke message. So this invokes the processing associated with that message. So for example, if this is a get files message, what I'm doing is I am stripping out the file names out of the message, and then I am going to send that information to the main thread to put in the list box. My child thread isn't allowed to put them in the list box. Right? And we'll see all that happen. So now I create a thread, make it the background thread so that if If I kill it, the thread, if I kill the process, the thread is killed, and then I start the thread. In C++, you don't start the threads because it starts up running, but in C#, they start up suspended, so this is really doing a resume on the thread. I actually like that better. Okay, so function dispatched by the child thread to the main thread. Clear DIRs. Dirlist items.add. So here, when I get a message with a bunch of directories, I need to clear the original directory list and then add, and I add them item by item by item, okay? Dispatch each single one. And I could give it a list. I could give it an array of all those things, but I chose to do it one at a time because this essentially does a yield. It puts one up and then yields so that the GUI can respond to user, pulling on changing the size or pulling on the title bar or whatever. So, so I'm just adding them and insert parent. So what happens is after I've added all the directories, I want to add this dot dot. And because I'm going to do something, I'm going to pop my, when I see dot dot as a selected item, I'm going to pop my stack, my path stack. Okay? If I see anything else besides dot dot, I'm going to push. I'm going to create the path by taking the top of the stack, adding slash selected dir, pushing it back on the stack, and away I go. So these I have to dispatch to the main thread. I'm not allowed to run these on the main thread because they're manipulating the window. I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to run these on the child thread because I'm manipulating the window. And clear, same thing with the files, clear files and add file, Now, add client proc, this is how I, once I've decided what the message key is going to be and the processing necessary to handle that message, now I'm adding it to the dispatcher with this edge client proc, okay? Okay. Now, dispatcher load get dirs. So what's happening here is, this is a function that is going to define the processing for get dirs. This is the client proc, but it's also going to load that client proc immediately into the dispatcher. So the first thing I need to do is I need to clear the directories because I'm gonna put some stuff in that directory list. And I don't want the old stuff there. So I define. So now this action is like a standard function that returns void and accepts void. Okay, but the action. All actions return void. And an action with no arguments accepts void. An action with one argument accepts an object of that type. An action with two types accepts two arguments. So anyway, I just want to clear them. So clear dirs, I'm calling that function I showed you. Okay, just saying directory items.clear. And now I'm dispatching it. This is how I get the main thread to execute that function. What this is really doing is putting this, so this is a delegate, action delegate. Again, think of it like a standard function. It's putting this someplace where the main thread can find it. And then it is posting a message to the server's message queue saying, please go call that delegate. Those messages are just a integer. So there'll be an integer for each one of these invokes. Okay, that's dispatchers doing that, creating a custom Windows message. Okay, and each message is associated with an L param and an R param, and one of those is pointing to the delegate to invoke. So in comes this message, and the Windows message processor has a switch statement, and it grabs that, executes what's on that pointer, MD. And the other pointer points to the data if I'm passing in any data. points to an array of objects. So, so now I've cleared the directories. Now I got to do my other stuff. So now var enum receive message.attributes get enumerator. So now if key contains dir. Now what that message is going to have is a bunch of attributes that have dir1, the name of dir1, dir2, the name of dir2, dir3, the name of dir3. And I don't care. I have to have different keys because it's a map and it won't allow me to put in duplicate keys. But here I'm just grabbing. So this is really dir1 or dir2 or dir3. And I just, if it's dir at the beginning, you know, if you can find dir in the name, you got the right one. And then if key contains dir, now I'm going to build my action. So now this is a delegate that returns nothing but accepts a string. So here, do dir equals, here's the string it accepts, add dir. Okay, and now it dispatches to the main thread. And now I say that the object, the dir name is enumer.current.value because I'm enumerating over. So I just grab the value out and I pass it. Okay. And now, so now so now I have put each of those dirs in the dir list box. Now I'm gonna put the dot dot in the list box. So action, insert up, insert parent, and if you look at insert parent, all it does is insert quote dot dot in the first element of the list box. So I can click on it, and now my handler recognizes that means I popped the set. So, and now I dispatch this to the, now I don't have any arguments, so now my argument list is empty. I got to supply it. I can't leave this off. It expects an array of objects, but I can give it an empty array of. And now add client proc get dirs. So now I'm adding that to the dispatcher, so the dispatcher knows how to do its stuff.
Professor,
Yeah.
can you give me a hint that why we not use local functions here, but use the delegate?
Because you're saying, why don't I just call add dir myself?
Yeah.
Because I'm running on a child thread, I am absolutely forbidden for to manipulate any part of that window.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
But why the child thread not know this local function? Why don't they know this?
They do, because they're going to call it. I'm telling them. So here, this is the local function that the main thread knows about.
Yeah.
And I'm just telling it here in this, call that function. That's all I'm doing. I'm giving it the arguments to call it with, and I'm telling them to call that local function.
Yeah, I know how the delegate works.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe I will.
So here, I'm a child thread, and I know what should be done. That dir name should be put in the list box, but I am not allowed to do it. I've got to get the main thread to do it.
Okay.
And that's what I'm doing here, getting the main thread. Instead of, I could directly call that function, I'd throw an exception. But what I'm doing, what all this is doing right here is getting the main thread to call that function.
So it is from the child thread to ask the main thread to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, got it.
Professor, the parameter is the one which you're passing it in the invoke function, right?
Beg your pardon?
For the add directory parameter, the parameters which the main thread will pick up is from the dispatcher.invoke which you're passing, right?
Yeah. Notice that all of this is a client proc. So none of this is running until my client proc runs. But now, when I add